I stuck with Susan through the toughest 7 years, and now, at the peak of her career, she's openly chasing my stepbrother. When reporters asked her about it, she was straightforward. I've held back for so long. Now I'm finally following my heart. I just smiled. I helped her deal with all the negative press and let her be reckless for her new love over and over again. Eventually, Susan got arrested for hurting someone for him. I took control of the company, becoming the new leader in place of her. After she was jailed, Susan tearfully asked for my forgiveness. I laughed and pulled her hand away. Susan, I've waited too long to get you out of the way. When I got Susan's call, I had just finished a big international meeting. I barely had a chance to rest when Susan said, "Grab a few clothes and drive over to the police station." I frowned. What happened? There was a brief pause. Calvin was harassed by some thugs, and I came to handle it. Calvin is the young celebrity from the entertainment industry that Susan has been openly pursuing. He's also my stepbrother. For him, Susan ditched business partners and skipped multiple board meetings, frustrating the company's directors. I was the one cleaning up her mess every time. She wasn't being discreet at all. This time, she even caused a scene at the police station for Calvin. Before I could say anything, Susan added, "Hurry up. Calvin's shook up and he can't wait too long." I drove there and saw Calvin leaning against Susan asleep. He looked so frail, nestled in her arms. It was almost pitiful. I stood at the entrance, watching this sickening scene, expressionless. Susan spotted me, waved her hand tiringly at me. She took the coat from my arms and gently wrapped it around Calvin, slowly waking him and preparing to leave, her eyes full of concern. As we walked, she filled me in on the details she hadn't mentioned over the phone. Calvin's not as small time as before. Rivals are out to get him, and today's incident could hurt his reputation if the paparazzi catch wind. I don't trust anyone else. Only you can get us away from this. James, you get it, right? Susan had said things like this multiple times in our 7-year relationship. She'd mentioned working non-stop to help me live comfortably sooner. She'd come back drunk from sealing deals and still ask me, "James, I love you. You get it, don't you?" Yet, she was the same person who distantly asked me when her affair with Calvin was discovered. In our industry, we have to keep up appearances. It's all for business. You get it, right? I chuckled, of course. Seeing my smile, she visibly relaxed and smiled back, saying, "Once we're back, make sure the PR team keeps an eye on the news. I worry some reporters might still capture some unflattering photos of Calvin. He's at a critical career transition. Can't have any mistakes." In the rearview mirror, I saw Susan holding Calvin, gently patting his back, soothing him. I recalled the gossip I'd heard on set a few days ago. Calvin had told someone to plan incidents when Susan was around to evoke that hero rescuing the damsel vibe. He'd said, "Best if it lands us at the police station. That'll make James come himself to pick us up, and he'll finally give up, giving me a shot at rising." Just as he wished, I showed up, but I hadn't given up. In fact, my desire to take the company grew stronger. The next morning, Susan and Calvin's scandal hit the headlines. The headline was bold and read, "Susan fights for her new rising star." I called to ask about it, only to be told that Susan herself instructed the release of these stories. With a tentative tone, the voice on the other end said, "James, Susan said it's a gift for her love. Not only release them, but push them to the top." Hanging up, I browsed the posts. The photos were thorough, not just capturing Susan defending Calvin, but also showing me driving them back home, like a chauffeur. Many comments below read, "James is a company exec, yet he's always handling Susan's and Calvin's issues? I heard James likes Susan. He's probably fighting Calvin for her. My Calvin is so handsome. Who wouldn't be smitten? Who could win over Calvin?" The internet was abuzz, joking about how I was a love-struck fool who couldn't see the truth. I turned off my phone and went back to reviewing documents my assistant brought in. Shortly after, a brash message buzzed in. As brash as the sender, "See, you can't beat me." On my mom's funeral day, Calvin had said something similar. Holding a limited edition Gundam model with big innocent eyes, he told me, "See, you can't beat me." Dad will always be only mine. Calvin was the product of my dad's infidelity. After the affair, he cold-shouldered my mom, trying to force a breakup. Wanted my mom to leave empty-handed, so he could happily be with the other woman. Because back then, the other woman was already pregnant. He couldn't bear Calvin being labeled an illegitimate child. To achieve this, he didn't hesitate to use my life to force my mom's compliance. Calvin, too, inherited that other woman's nasty nature, constantly provoking us, having people threaten me at school. I'd beat him up every time, though each time he'd curl up with my dad and claim I bullied him. When my mom passed, he showed up with a group, banging drums at her memorial. Back then, I snatched Calvin's Gundam, tossed it into the fire, then grabbed Calvin, forced him to kneel, making him apologize to my mom. Almost like a prophecy coming true, the video of Susan's interview skyrocketed to trending, just as Calvin had predicted. In the clip, you can see Susan hustling along, clearly fresh from an expo. The reporter asked if her bold moves yesterday meant things were heating up between her and the young Calvin. Susan's smile was steady. She replied, "I can't disclose that right now." After a brief pause, she added, "But after holding back for so many years, I am finally following my heart." Oh, so all these 7 years with me, she was just holding back. Huh? Quite the hardship. I smirked sarcastically. I barely finished watching the interview when Susan called. Not to explain the trending topic or the interview, but to ask me to step in and protect her darling on set. She said, "James, could you swing by Calvin's set? He's filming a commercial right now. See how he's doing, because if he's decent, I want him to be the face of our new product." In the background, her assistant was reminding her that she was running late for a meeting with Mr. Fong. The assistant finished and Susan went on, "I've got stuff to take care of, so I can't make it. Please check if Calvin's getting any grief there. The trending topic's too hot right now. I've even got people waiting outside my place. Make sure Calvin doesn't have a hard time." Thanks to Susan's little trending number, Calvin got a ton of attention. Several dating shows threw him invites, and in the reality show he was on, he got more screen time. Sponsors were lining up to toss ad spots his way. On set, Calvin was posing in front of the camera, rotating through different looks. Seeing me, he dropped everything and jogged over. "Must have been a rough trip. Take a seat and rest," he said, trying to be considerate. Before I could respond, he feigned shyness. I told Susan it's unnecessary to have someone look after me, but she wouldn't hear it. "You're going through all this trouble." I arched an eyebrow and sneered. "What makes you think you can call me bro?" The smile on Calvin's face froze. Not far off, my assistant was handing out coffee and milk tea to the crew. Calvin noticed and gloated. "Susan's idea, right? She always brings tea for the crew for my sake. Didn't expect you to be doing it too. Is it for Susan?" He chuckled. "James, you're very generous." I looked at Calvin, his face strikingly handsome. With the lighting, he appeared almost dreamy. What a pity. Beneath it all is a heart rotten to the core. He leaned in, trying to show off his youth to me, but I grabbed his pretty face hard, smiling easily. "Calvin, your only asset is this face. Make sure it stays unharmed." Calvin's expression turned to horror, trying to summon help without luck. My assistant was managing the situation, making sure no one stepped in. I slid my hand to his most vulnerable neck and lightly squeezed. Calvin froze in fear. I took in his panic, something not even his acting could fake. "Calvin, you haven't changed a bit. Still that stupid. Did you really think you'd stand a chance against me with Susan's trifling affection?" I whispered right in his ear, "In your dreams." I had people block Calvin's scripts and all the endorsements Susan used her connections for. I redirected them, gave them to Calvin's rivals. When Calvin found out, I was in a company meeting with Susan sitting right next to me. She glanced at her phone, then looked at me with mixed feelings. One look, and I knew Calvin had gone crying to her. As expected, she waved off the meeting in annoyance and sent everyone out, leaving just me behind. When it was just the two of us, Susan said, "Tired, James, Calvin's roles and endorsements got snatched away. They say it's on your orders. Did you do it?" I nodded. Susan's eyes grew even more complex. She asked, "But why?" You see, when Calvin first appeared around Susan, she had no clue who he was. Just a fling to her, a passing distraction. Calvin kept it vague too. When they fell for each other, Calvin timidly confessed to Susan that he was my half-brother. At that moment, Susan might have felt a tinge of guilt. She apologized, said sorry for neglecting me, blamed alcohol for these blurry relationships we've ended up in. But she comforted herself, it's our parents who messed up, not Calvin. I can't take it out on him. Through her fake facade, I glimpsed a soul rotting away. I didn't bother explaining further or telling her how Calvin stormed my mom's funeral. I just silently plotted how to make these two lowlifes disappear from my life. My silence led Susan to misunderstand. She thought she had my tacit approval, believed I could accept her spreading herself thin between us. Now she dared to say, James, you and Calvin are blood after all. Can't you cut him some slack? I said, because I hate him. Susan, before you knew him, I had already made it clear I couldn't stand him. His mere presence makes me sick. I wish they would just disappear from the world, him and his mom, Maria. Susan turned her head away, like she didn't want to see me right now, but I still caught a flash of annoyance in her eyes. James, you and Calvin are different. You're the VP, you've got the company and shares. But Calvin, he's got nothing. He has to fight for every role just to get noticed. And you took away all his resources. How's he supposed to move forward? How? Isn't that why you're opposing me and standing up for him? I looked at Susan, avoiding my gaze yet standing firm, and found it amusing. Tapping my forefinger lightly on the table, I said, you're right. Susan turned to me, seeming to expect some kind of realization from me. I said, I am the VP, I have the company, I have shares. If I can't crush someone as insignificant as Calvin after reaching this position, then what was the point of all my hard work these past years? Susan looked shocked. She stared at me, searching for any hint of regret or sorrow on my face. But there wasn't any. I've never regretted my decisions. I met her gaze fearlessly. After a long pause, she finally said, James, when did you become so ruthless? She got up and walked out, accusing me as she went. I knew it. I shouldn't have gone to see that Mr. Fong like you asked. Calvin was right. Anybody could have handled that project. You just wanted me out of the way so you could go after Calvin. Calvin said this, Calvin said that. Susan's mind was filled with Calvin, completely forgetting our days of struggle back in the basement. She had made a promise before my mom's grave. Before leaving, she accused me, James, you've changed. You climbed higher, got the money and power, and you're no longer the gentle and humble James you once were. You've become ruthless and relentless, like a heartless machine willing to destroy anyone for personal gain. You'll regret it. After Susan left, I sat in the conference room for a while. Susan's assistant, Leo, messaged me saying she was unhappy with her schedule for the next few days. She wanted all her meetings, dinners, and partner visits passed to me. Leo quoted Susan, since James has so much time to meddle in the entertainment industry, he should take on more work. Leo asked what I thought. I said, fine, give it all to me. After that, Susan often stayed by Calvin's side. She arranged new opportunities for him, frequently visiting film sets under the guise of company inspections. Photos of them kept trending due to fans. Calvin and Susan were a hot topic. Company execs were unhappy with Susan and often brought their grievances to me, which I tried to handle. Calvin would occasionally send me provocative messages. He sent me pictures of Susan peeling shrimp for him at the set, boasting, I told you, once I step in, there's no place for you by Susan's side. In the photo, Susan was peeling shrimp, and a pile of shells was next to her. The peeled shrimp was in front of Calvin, who had sauce on his face and a bright smile as he faced the camera. This was the best he could devise to provoke me. It made me smile. For him, finding a woman to rely on was the biggest achievement. I remembered the trending remarks about Calvin and Susan, perfect match made in heaven. Both not so bright indeed, a heavenly match. I saved the photos and messages in a folder called Revenge on my USB. Then I continued to let them be. At another meeting Susan missed, several execs demanded an explanation from me. James, Susan has been acting way out of line lately. How could she miss such an important meeting? What could be so urgent that only she can handle it? We know you two worked hard to get here, but the company isn't just Susan's. We need an explanation. Otherwise, how can anyone trust her to be president? In front of everyone, I called Susan. After a few rings, I heard her tired voice. What is it? I looked around the room at the displeased faces and asked, what are you up to right now? Susan murmured, James, you went too far this time. Calvin's mood is affected badly. It's impacting his filming. I'm with him now. I stayed silent. She added, you should come over and apologize to Calvin when you can. In the background, I heard Calvin's soft sobbing. This was typical Calvin, showing weak aggression in front of me while acting all innocent and pitiful with Susan, thinking that might take away what I cherish most. The room had a mix of expressions. Not waiting for Susan to continue, I hung up the call. The room fell silent. Moments later, someone asked, James, what's going on? I smiled gently. Didn't you all ask where Susan was? I'm giving you an answer. Clearly, Susan has prioritized something else over the company. For the sake of that man, she's caused countless media storms and burdened our PR department. She abandoned us in this critical transition for her so-called partner and used the company's resources and connections for an insignificant actor. Her actions compromise not only her interests but also the company's reputation. I paused, then continued, but I'm not like her. For me, the company's always the most important. You should know from now on who to trust more. The meeting wrapped up and everyone left. I stared at the message I accidentally sent to Calvin. It was a dinner invitation saying Susan and I were invited. I timed it perfectly so Calvin would see it before I could retract it. When he messages me questioning it, I'll hit him with a few more punches. Even if you saw it, it doesn't matter. I don't need to hide this. No matter how famous you get, it'll always be me going with Susan. Face it, Calvin. You're the loser here. Completely and utterly. I even had someone go to the set to help Susan pick out her outfit for the event, all to get under Calvin's skin. After our last fight, I slowly cut off Susan's updates on company matters with Leo's help. Susan, busy with Calvin, didn't notice the subtle changes. Today, she didn't realize when I called her that it was during the company board meeting. She probably thought I was waiting for her call in the designer's studio. That night, I went back to the apartment and packed up Susan's things into boxes. Big boxes piled up in the living room as I sat on the couch with a glass of wine, sipping alone. Then the doorbell started ringing over and over, frantic and impatient. I opened the door to find Susan, who I hadn't seen in a while, standing there. She had a clean scent of men's cologne, looking annoyed. The moment she saw me, she blurted out, "Why didn't you tell me you changed the passcode and deleted my fingerprint?" I just looked at her calmly and said, "I was tired of the old one." As for not telling her, it's because she wouldn't need it anymore. She wanted to keep asking, but when her eyes met the boxes in the living room, she went silent. Susan stood by the door frame for a while, her brow furrowing, as she took in everything she could see. After a moment, she hesitantly asked, "Are all those boxes my stuff?" I nodded. She asked, "Are you throwing them out?" "Why?" I replied, "They're too worn out. Better to get new things." Susan clutched the door frame so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her gaze slowly shifted back to my face. "Are you kicking me out?" I chuckled, "No, come in." I used to wait at home for Susan countless times. She didn't want me drinking or wheeling and dealing for projects, worrying it'd hurt my health, so she took on most of the networking events. Back then, I sat quietly in our rented house, waiting for her to stagger back home. I'd then cradle her and make her drink tea to sober up as she drunkenly confessed. She comforted me, saying we would reach brighter days. I waited for her many times, but never like this. In our brightly lit living room, sitting across from each other, we were divided by someone else's perfume, silent. Back then we were poor, but the love was genuine. Now we are wealthy, but I realize genuine heart is the cheapest thing you can have. The night wind blew through the window, chilling the room. Susan asked softly, "Are you breaking up with me for real?" Breaking up with her, letting her be with him? That's too convenient. But I still smiled and said, "Yes." It was tough getting to where we are now. I thought it over, And you're right, if you can't pursue who you love now, what's the point? Susan and I never explicitly said we broke up. From the moment I became VP, we were always fighting. About the company, projects, even the newbies we each mentored. Later, Susan often stayed out, claiming it was for work. Another thing to fight about, her playing the field. By the time Calvin appeared, I was already exhausted. I knew our relationship had crossed a line. I didn't explicitly say we're over, and she didn't officially choose Calvin. This was the first time we put it out there. Susan swallowed her words, silent for a moment. I carried on, saying, but I'm the kind of guy who sees things through. If it starts honestly, it should end in a proper goodbye. We need something real to mark the end of us. Susan, this is the last bit of respect I ask for. So, on that site she made for us to record our relationship moments, she wrote the words to officially shut it down. In our chat, like on our first day together, she sent a little game character running ahead, full of hope. On our last day, the character lay dejected on the ground, staring at a gray game over above. Underneath she wrote, "After the breakup, may your life continue." I said, "It will." Finishing this, it was much calmer when we sat again. We even peacefully shared a cup of tea. As the steam rose, Susan asked, "Has anything happened at the company recently?" I replied, "Nope, I've handled everything." Susan nodded, "Good." She thought for a moment, then added, "I might have to take Calvin to that dinner next week. He needs the networking." Expected, I didn't refuse. With our goals met, Susan got up to leave. Before going, she asked, "Can't you and Calvin just coexist?" I looked at her seriously and said, "Susan, that day will never come. I'll clean up your mess, because we were once teammates, but not Calvin. As long as I'm alive, Calvin will never have it easy." Our fragile warmth disappeared instantly, but it's all right, I got what I wanted. On the night of the banquet, Susan still brought Calvin along. Calvin treated the banquet hall like his own red carpet. He dressed exceptionally glamorous, mingling through the crowd as Susan's date. He kept greeting various investors, and I watched from the sidelines. I saw Susan holding Calvin's hand like he was a treasure, introducing him to people in high society with a smile in her eyes. Meanwhile, I toasted with business partners alone. When he arrived, I briefly pulled Susan aside to discuss a collaboration with him. By the time most of the discussion was done, Calvin, who had been waiting, looked like he was about to blow a fuse. He walked over, smiling through gritted teeth, and awkwardly taunted me. "Split up and still clinging to Susan, huh?" He looked around and laughed. "At such an important event, you didn't even bring a date? Can't find one after the breakup? You could ask me for help. I have plenty of friends in the circle. Any one of them could fill in for you." As Calvin continued, Susan's expression grew more unpleasant. By the end, Susan instinctively held onto Calvin's arm to stop him from speaking further. Right at that moment, I looked up and met her eyes, and her gaze darkened. She said, "You can take full charge of Mr. Sue's project. I won't be involved." Then, Susan hurriedly left with Calvin. I stayed where I was, casually swirling my drink, faintly hearing the arguing behind me. Calvin accused Susan of not treating him as well as before. Susan said Calvin was over the line. I smiled. Women's guilt is truly the best weapon. With just a little guilt, Susan handed over the project. It worked perfectly. In the restroom, clear water ran over my hands. Calvin was looking quite pleased, completely unaware of the extent of the concessions Susan had made for him. I kindly pointed out some truths to this fool. "Calvin, I don't need a date because I'm the best pass in this event. But you need a date because without latching onto a woman, you wouldn't even qualify to get in here." Maybe what I said got to Calvin, or maybe he was eager to flaunt his relationship with Susan further. After the banquet, Susan started running to the film set more often. I handled a lot of company affairs, while Susan and Calvin frequently made the headlines, with Susan openly acknowledging their relationship. In pictures taken by fans, Calvin seemed happier. The messages he sent me were more provocative. Between the lines, he expressed his joy of soon becoming Susan's husband, and his pity and ridicule for me. And Susan certainly spoiled him. She sent lavish gifts to the set, letting him pick what he liked. When she couldn't make it, Susan had Calvin's family accompany him on set. Once, when I visited the set to check on production materials, I ran into Maria. She was soaking up flattery from others. Seeing me, she couldn't hold back. She arrogantly demanded that I greet her. I didn't spare her even a glance. Annoyed, Maria started accusing me of being ungrateful. "You ungrateful brat, born just to spite me." Unlike Calvin, who's so sweet even after becoming famous, he hasn't forgotten about his mom and brought me here to enjoy. Maria's so-called filial Calvin was secretly directing someone to record this melodrama. Not long after, news surfaced of deputy manager James not acknowledging his mother. The stories claimed James became successful and disowned his poor mom, refusing to support her and never visiting on holidays. They even claimed James cut off contact unilaterally. Furthermore, James reportedly envied his successful stepbrother in the entertainment industry and repeatedly tried to sabotage him. The story went on about James's stepmother attempting to patch things up, only to be pushed by James during a visit to the set. It was fabricated convincingly enough, with pictures and videos of me shoving Maria at the set to back it up. When I contacted the PR department to suppress the news, Susan called. She said, "Calvin just wanted to vent, you shoved her too hard." I chuckled. "Too hard? I only regret not pushing her dead." Susan paused. "James, when did you become so vicious?" Susan criticized me over the phone for being heartless and cruel, disregarding family ties. She said, "Calvin has told me all about it. The truth is, there was more to the story back then. Your uncle and aunt had long been without love, and staying together brought only misery. It was your aunt who first suggested divorce, freeing your dad to meet Calvin's mom. Your uncle always felt remorseful for not being able to care for you all these years. Since she wants to make amends, why can't you let go of the past?" Gripping the phone tightly, I asked her, "So now you want me to bow down to them? It was your fault originally, you pushed first. Let them vent, and everything will return to peace. Aren't you afraid of the public backlash affecting the company?" "It won't, I'm the actual person in charge." Before Susan could continue, I hung up. With Susan backing him up, Calvin was happily slinging mud, accusing me of being heartless to family, thwarting Calvin and Susan's union. Susan's presence by Calvin's side served as undeniable proof of everything, which conveniently was exactly what I needed. When the online backlash against me hit its peak, I took my time and posted the truth about my dad's affair back in the day and the evidence of Calvin sneaking in during my relationship with Susan. Back when Susan and I were together, she put a lot of effort into creating a webpage. It documented all the little things she did for me and every day worth remembering. The page recorded the exact millisecond we broke up, just half a month ago. The day Susan mentioned breaking up with me in that chat was the same. And her relationship with Calvin? Well, there was plenty of online buzz proving it had been going on for almost a year. I went ahead and shared all of Calvin's bragging texts he sent me, along with every little dirty trick he'd pulled. I didn't leave anything out. The public opinion flipped quickly. Calvin went from everyone's favorite to being known as a homewrecker in just an hour. Susan was so mad she called me, saying what I did was too much and promised to give me a piece of her mind on Calvin's behalf. I could hear Calvin's faint crying on the other end of the line, mixed with some pathetic apologies. "Susan, don't do this. I took him from you. It's obvious James isn't happy. If my brother's mad, I'll take responsibility. Don't fight with him over me. It doesn't bother me." Hearing this only made Susan angrier. She warned me, "James, you'll regret this." "I won't." Susan would figure out soon enough that while she was away from the office, I'd neatly stripped her of her control. She tried to suppress the online buzz about Calvin, only to realize that the platform was outwardly agreeing to help, but in reality, boosting my content. Calvin lost all his endorsements and gigs. Susan tried to hook him up with other opportunities, but all the major projects were in my hands, and investors only treated her with surface-level politeness. The only thing she could do was use her own money to pay off Calvin's breach of contract. But that kind of help didn't put out the fires Calvin was facing. Calvin and Maria were frantic, constantly calling me. When one number got blocked, they'd just switch to another. While Susan was tied up with company matters, I finally picked up Calvin's call. He screamed over the phone, "James, what the hell do you want?" I said, "I want to take you and Susan down." "Are you crazy? Aren't you afraid of dragging Susan down too? You treat me like this, but you're no saint either." "Dragging her down? I'm pulling her off her pedestal." Unlike Calvin's madness, I was in a great mood. I added, "Calvin, besides leeching off women, what else are you good at? With a snap of my fingers, you could be ousted from this circle. Susan's got enough problems of her own, she won't have time for you." I advised him, "You should start packing today so when you leave, you still have some dignity left." Feeling generous, I warned, "Oh, by the way, if you keep acting crazy, I'll release this call recording. My phone's got great audio quality, and my storytelling's solid. It'll keep your fans entertained for days." Calvin instantly shut up and hung up. At the office, when I ran into Susan, she asked, "Do you really have to go this far?" I shook my head. "I'm not going to the extreme. I've left room for you. If you come back, I'll clear any obstacles for you." Susan gave me a long, deep look, said nothing, and walked away. That night, I heard Calvin went to a party thrown by director Victor, known as a real industry slimeball, trying to get some resources to stage a comeback. At the party, he humbled himself to no avail, and Victor, who'd had his eyes on Calvin for a while, made his move. Susan had shielded Calvin from such situations for a long time. Startled, Calvin tried to flee but was cornered by Victor's guys. In a moment of sheer desperation, Susan swooped in like a guardian angel, pulling Calvin out of the fire. Both sides thought they were justified and powerful, and they went at each other with full force. In the chaos, someone called the cops, and soon enough, the media got wind of it. My assistant Annie informed me to head to the police station to deal with the situation. Once there, I patted her on the shoulder, saying, "Good job." When I reached the station, Calvin was curled up on a chair, weeping. It was all reminiscent of the beginning, one side pitifully shocked and the other playing the hero. And here I was, the ever-tolerant, dignified sidekick, cleaning up the mess from behind. Only this time, Calvin had really almost been taken advantage of, and Susan had injured Victor severely while saving him. The news hit the internet, causing an uproar. Sure, Victor was a known scumbag, but his power kept this sort of stuff out of the public eye until now. This was her first time being thrust into the spotlight like this, in such a messy way. The drama of Calvin being the homewrecker hadn't even died down before Susan's assault of a director for love, and her exposure of Victor's scandal broke out. After so many twists, various keywords clogged the trending topics. The PR department's phones were ringing off the hook, and I was swamped. When I saw Susan, I was exhausted. Susan's injuries had been treated by then, and when she saw me, her eyes were filled with impatience. "What about Victor?" I said, "He's not dead, but he's in the hospital in a coma. The doctors aren't sure if he'll even wake up." Susan had built up a lot of anger with me keeping her in check recently. During the scuffle, she unleashed all of it on Victor. She'd seized any chance to pummel his head, hitting him hard. So, even with Victor taken to the best hospital and given the finest medication, they could only save his wretched life. The surveillance footage was crystal clear, and Victor along with the media kept pressuring you, right? I didn't finish my sentence, but Susan should understand. With things blowing up this much, she can't escape charges of intentional injury. She's got years in prison ahead. She looked at me with hope, her lips trembling. "I know about the company." I said, "Don't worry, I've got it all under control." This time, she wisely didn't ask me to protect Calvin too. Sure enough, in tough times, people fend for themselves. It was raining when I got out of the police station. I stared at the rain, lost in thought. A big umbrella was extended towards me, shielding me from the splashing raindrops. Rain hit the umbrella with a constant pattering sound. Annie asked respectfully, "James, heading back now?" I took a deep breath. "Annie, didn't you say your brother was toyed to death by Victor when he first entered the entertainment industry? Now you've helped me out and I've avenged him for you. From now on, you're free. Do whatever you want, live the life you want without having to follow me." I reached for the umbrella, but Annie held it tightly. Annie was once James's and will always be. As long as James is willing, there'll always be a place for me. I didn't use the company's power to protect Susan as she suggested. Instead, I proposed to the board that we cut our losses. Victor's camp was not to be underestimated. They demanded an explanation from us, or else the company would be dragged down too. My stance was clear. Rely on the police's results, cooperate proactively, and don't interfere. After all, people must pay for what they've done. The board decided that I would assume the CEO position. Starting today, all senior managers report to me. Nobody objected. After all, the company's most crucial projects were in my hands. Just like when the investors chose to abandon Calvin, the board chose to abandon Susan today. But I still visited Susan in jail from time to time. I told her that the company and I would wait for her, that I'd keep everything safe until she returned, and that the power would still be hers. Then I'd pass over some documents for her to sign. At first, Susan would check them carefully. Later, touched by my efforts, she lowered her guard. She stopped checking the documents I brought and occasionally said she loved me dearly. James, after everything, I realized you're the one I love most. Don't worry, when I get out, we'll get married. We'll be just like before, and no one will come between us again. I just smiled. Sometimes, when I couldn't visit, Annie would go to the prison on my behalf to deliver documents. Annie was right, she was indeed very useful. Susan completely trusted her and didn't know it was Annie who guided Calvin to meet Victor, or that Annie gave her the tip-off to pick Calvin up from the club. Nor did she know that, at the critical moment, Annie sold all the dirt on Victor and Calvin to the media, pinning them to the wall of shame. The day Susan unwittingly signed the equity transfer agreement, Annie brought news about Calvin to me. After Susan's arrest, Calvin lost his support. Everyone in our company saw him as bad news and avoided him. Naturally, no one helped him. Calvin, fearing retaliation from Victor's people, sought refuge with another investor. They protected him for a while, but they liked new things, and after growing tired of him, they tossed him aside. Victor's family, waiting for the chance, retaliated hard, breaking one of Calvin's legs and hitting him on the head, leaving him in a park flower bed in shambles to ruin his already tarnished reputation. An elderly woman found him during her morning walk and took him to the police, sparking a new round of disputes. Maria faced retaliation even earlier than Calvin and is now insane, wandering around aimlessly. But that's their business. I just delivered the news to Susan, watching her disbelief, her composure break. When I mentioned Calvin leaving her for others, Susan was livid. How dare he? I knew from the start that Calvin's intentions with Susan weren't pure. It was his wretched mother's idea. Maria saw how well I was doing and wanted money. I refused. She threatened to ask Susan if I didn't give her any. At the time, Susan and I were deeply in love, and I was worried Maria would disrupt Susan's career. I quietly looked at Maria, said nothing, just smoked a cigarette. Then I got her detained for extortion. After that, she stayed out of my sight. I thought she was scared. I didn't expect she'd hatch a despicable plan to have her son seduce Susan, thinking without Susan, I'd be nothing. But that's not true. I'll show her with her long life ahead, that with or without Susan, I am James. I looked at Susan, revealing how Calvin came to be in her life. Susan's expression changed soon after. So, you knew all along what Calvin's intentions were? She incredulously asked me. You know it. I know it. Of course, I know. Back then, I was already tired of arguing with Susan. Also tired of questioning her about why she couldn't put more effort into the company. She treated the company's business like a joke because of her own desires. I wanted to kick her out of the company, but I needed the right moment. So, I let Calvin get close to Susan, but then pushed Calvin to the brink so Susan would have to act out of love. Luckily, when everyone at the company was disappointed with Susan, I could quickly and reasonably kick her out. I said, "Who likes cleaning up someone else's mess? Susan, I'm a businessman, everything I do is calculated. If I wasn't planning to kick you out, do you think I'd have tolerated this long?" She asked me in a trembling voice, "So why are you here today?" I said, "To tell you that you're of no value anymore. I won't be back." Coming out of the prison, I remembered something Susan said during a fight about Calvin. She said I rose to power and wealth and then wiped out everyone around me. I know that was her true feeling. All that stuff about playing along and fleeting romances. Fake. Back then, her assistant, a young guy new to the workforce, kept making mistakes. His work skills were terrible, but he knew how to mimic the younger me to win Susan's heart. He'd often stir up trouble between Susan and me, meddling in her project decisions. I fired him. Susan thought I was ruthless. She said, "He's just a newbie. He needs time to grow and adapt. Why not give him a chance?" That's when I realized Susan hated the man I'd become. I remembered that locked photo album on Susan's phone full of pictures of her young assistant. He was youthful and vibrant. In those photos, he made funny faces, exaggerated and playful, eyes full of hope and trust in the photographer. So confident, so poised, just like me in my early 20s. And there I was, wearing a sharp suit, thin gold glasses, strictly overseeing every detail, yet smiling politely at every partner. That version of me was ordinary, fake, and masked, showing no trace of who I really was. James, full of sunshine and innocence, couldn't guide Susan to her peak. But there will always be sunny, innocent people in the world. 30-year-old Susan had the power and status she craved. She didn't need someone like me, reminding her of past struggles and pains. Nor did she need someone as strong as me to occasionally remind her of her own weaknesses. She wanted to find a sense of existence among the weak, to have a partner she could dominate, constantly reminding her of her strength and invincibility. So when Calvin came along, she didn't turn him down. But that's okay. In the days to come, she can fully reminisce about her love within those four walls, and I will rise to new heights with my career. I walked forward with big strides, and on the road, I smelled the fragrance of flowers. I remembered my favorite line from a poem at 17. In the best time of spring, surpassing all the beauty of the capital filled with smoky willows.